SetListTees.
I don't know, man. I think we're going to need a wider net. Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of Casting a Wider Net. I am your co-host, Ryan Stanley, joined today by the awesome John Prue. How's it going, John?
Everything's going good.
Getting better by the minute. So yes, this is episode 1, Casting a Wider Net. I'll give you a quick breakdown of what the show is all about. The concept is that I am a super Phish nerd. Obviously, this show is presented by SetListTees. You get your favorite concert on your shirt, the date of your favorite concert on the front of your shirt. The set list from the concert is on the back. This was actually my first Phish show ever, July 25th, 1993, Waterloo Village. Set list is on the back. John Prue is wearing the ever-popular August 9th, 1998. The Phish Encored with Terrapin Station is kind of the highlight of that. John, you were there, right?
I was there, and everybody talks about the Terrapin Station. Nobody digs into the rest of the set. The entire show was amazing. So if you've only listened to the Terrapin Station, I'm going to recommend ahead of time to dig in and listen to the rest of that show, because you will not be disappointed.
Just, that whole summer that really, I always, 97 gets so much love, and then they go into Island Tour, 98, early 98 gets a lot of love. People forget like the thickness of summer 98 as well, like just the constant. I think they're running on all cylinders after such a powerful 97. So I'm a huge fan of 98. In fact, even fall 98, some of those shows from Hampton Coliseum are pretty powerful stuff.
I totally agree with that. And and it's tough because Phish has it's this weird thing where it's like the odd years, seem to be if the end of the year is an odd number, those tend to be the ones that get talked about the most.
Yeah.
But man, there's some really good even year stuff, and 98 has got to be at the top of the list of the even years. 94 is another one that to me is just all the time overlooked, and I've been doing deeper dives into with a couple of different listening projects that I do into 94, and man, I really like that year. 98 too.
I actually saw more Phish live, I think, in 94 than any other tour. That was like the one summer tour I did in 94. I was, it just turned 18 and was kind of in between things, and had a little bit of time and a little bit of inclination. Ended up on a mountain in Vermont right at the end of the summer for up at Stowe and Sugarbush. That was pretty awesome. Awesome time to be alive.
Absolutely, yeah. I didn't realize that you were at the Sugarbush show in 94, so that's a good one.
Yeah, that was definitely, to say the least, hitting the head with a comet. But anyway, I digress. So casting a wider net, the whole concept, obviously we could talk about Phish all day long for hours and hours, and that to a point has been a challenge for me in the sense that I find myself in these Phish holes, and it's all I listen to, or Phish projects of some sort. I certainly listen to other music, but I don't necessarily learn about new music. And as I was thinking about this and looking for a vehicle to share, music and talk about Phish, I also wanted to be able to learn about new music and talk about new music that I hadn't heard of. And so John and I met a couple of years ago at a networking event right before a Phish concert, and we've become friends ever since. I think that was August 8th, 2018.
That's correct.
Was the day that we met. And we're actually going to talk. We met before that show. It was a show at Camden. And we're going to talk a little bit about that show today. We took time to listen to it, and we're going to dive deep into it. And that's the first half of the show. So the concept of the show is the first half, we're going to dive deep into a particular concert. We chose the 8/8/18 today because that's the day that we met. We thought it was fitting for our first episode. And then the second half of the show, John has recommended 2 new bands that I've never heard of, and then a third band, which I have heard of, but we just decided it's an awesome song to kind of look at, awesome band to kind of look at as our initial episode is kicking into gear. And so those bands are, the first one is Middle Kids, and I think the album is called We're the Greatest. Second band is called the Libras, and John will talk a little bit more about that and where he found that, and their album is called Faded. And then Goose, everybody, obviously, I think if you're here, likely, and if you're a fan of Phish and you found us that way, you've obviously heard about Goose. They are kicking ass and taking names. They're coming up faster than most younger bands have, I think, in the last decade in the jam scene. And so they're coming out with a new album in June, and I'm sure we'll dive into that when the time comes. But today we just decided to jump into their version of 2021, which was a Vampire Weekend song that they did a quarantine video of, produced by Ezra from Vampire Weekend, and they made it 20 minutes and 21 seconds long. And so we took a listen to that, and we're going to kind of dive into that as well. So the concept of casting a wider net is that for me, selfishly, I am looking to cast a wider net of new music, new bands, new sounds, new even cultures, perhaps, depending on, I think that's one thing we've talked a lot that we love most about Phish. Well, one of the things that we love most about Phish is the community, is the culture, is the group of people that are like-minded people who are meeting and connecting just on music alone. And so ideally, you out there, you're listening to us or watching us on YouTube, on the SetListTees YouTube channel. We'll introduce some new music to you today as well. So thank you for being here. John, as always, I genuinely appreciate your time, your insight, your wisdom when it comes to knowledge, when it comes to musical knowledge, and your time here today. So thank you. And without further ado, let's kick things into gear. August 8th, 2018 was a summer day. I remember it well. And I don't know. It starts off with the MoMA dance. I don't know. You want to just jump right in? Any thoughts on the opener with a MoMA?
Yeah, so I guess to set the stage a little bit more, it was a scorcher of a day.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this part of it. This was it was the first time that in my, I guess, like middle years, I ended up in the pit at a concert, and I put in through Phish tickets by mail, and I put in for best available, and I scored pit tickets for that night. So I was pretty excited because in the '90s I'd been in the pit plenty of times, and I was a younger guy, and they didn't cram as many people into the pit in the '90s either. So I jumped in and, came in, I got the wristband, I went down there, and it was just, you were packed in like sardines.
Yeah.
And I made the huge mistake of having like a backpack with a water bottle and like some small provisions that, in the backpack, which was a huge mistake because I ended up like flipping it around to the front and trying to hold on to it so it wouldn't be, so it wouldn't encumber other people's dance space, which was this much.
Right. Don't mind me.
But yeah, exactly. So, and I was over on Mike's side, and yeah, they come out, and man, any show that opens up with a MoMA dance, for me, it's gonna be a good one. I'm never ever disappointed when they open up with that one, and this one was no exception, man. I thought they did a very good version of it, and
yeah, I had lawn seats that day, so I was in the opposite spectrum. But still, I do remember the sun. I remember the sunset. One of the nicest things about the Camden Theater, actually, or being there, is the sunset that you get to see right over Philadelphia. And I remember very clearly just kind of enjoying the vibe, enjoying the music as it kicked into gear. When that first note hits, no matter what song it is, usually, but MoMA in particular, all of a sudden, like you just feel the funk, you feel everybody kind of going into the groove. And so, to your point, and actually, I'll dial it back and say, I feel like whatever song they open with, I'm always like, this is going to be a good show. It was just like Secret Smile or something like that. You're like, I don't know where this is going to go. They do something really strange. But in general, MoMA, I mean, people are ready to dance, right? I think this is the second day of a two night run. They played the night before, so this was the second night. And so people were, like you said, in the heat and ready to kick things into gear. And so MoMA is definitely a spectacular way to do that. It's not, not only is it energy, but it is funk, it is dance, it is groove, it is getting people ready to get psyched and kind of get in the zone. And so I love anytime they open with MoMA. Obviously, it's a big favorite. And from there they went.
Yeah, I agree on it.
Free. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, no. So I mean, with that, it's like Mike to me is the one that kind of drives MoMA forward. I mean, the bass line in there. To your point, it's like that groove that gets established, and he keeps that marching forward, and everybody else just does cool stuff with it. But then for them to take that into Free, which is just to me is like just an all-time summertime anthem.
Right.
I remember very clearly, doing the midnight release for Billy Breeds, and like standing in line to, back in the day when you had to do that, to get that CD,
yeah.
And man, like when the version of Free that's on there, it's still, it's like, I love the studio version of Free. And
totally.
There's not a lot of like studio Phish that I get really excited about. But that album, like I love Billy Breeds start to finish. So anytime that they play that one, I absolutely love it. So MoMA into Free, like, all right, I'm in, like there's,
you can feel the
it's
rock
going to be
at that
tough.
point, right? Free
yeah, no, exactly.
Rock too, right?
Exactly. It's going to be tough to disappoint me after that one. So.
And what was that? That was 98, right? Ish. Billy Breeds came out.
That sounds right. Yeah, I think it was probably somewhere in that. Yeah, somewhere in that area.
We go back to, we talked about the 98 being such a strong year. I know we kind of digressed to the shirt you're wearing, but it's like going back to that, like when Billy Breeds was coming out and they had all these new songs. I think they played Train Song later in the night, which is also from that. They do, but we'll check into that. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Free as well.
And plus, I think that I think that with Billy Breeze, I want to say that it was '96 that Billy Breeze came out, because I think that Story of the Ghost came out in '98. Those two albums, to me, I always get them kind of mixed up because they were the first two releases that I remember like as a Phish fan.
Yeah.
Because my first show was in '95, late '95, November 11th of '95 at the Fox Theater, which I
Nice.
really hope that we choose that one to dig into soon, because
I'm
to
in.
me it's one of those shows that I think a lot of people had that tape. It was pretty widely circulated. But that's obviously, I've got a million stories about that show.
Yeah.
But but yeah. But it's that time period, right, where they have gone from the Billy Breeze era into Story of the Ghost, and like the funk is really starting to happen. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like that 1-2 punch of MoMA, Free. And then they kick it into a completely different era with Undermine, which is another one that I love.
And I gotta say, man, Undermine for me, it's my favorite. It was the one song from Undermine itself that they I think they never played in 2.0. I could be wrong on that, but if they did, they maybe played it once or twice. But then all of a sudden, like really brought it back at Hampton in '09, right? It was like the first song from kind of that was okay to play.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, people sometimes think about Undermine, it's like, oh, it's like the end of 2.0. It was like, here's this, people were not necessarily excited about the behavior of certain members of the band at certain times. Some of the songs were, obviously, I mean, there's some amazing 2.0 out there. But a lot of the time, I think when 3.0 first started, there was almost like let's kind of forget about the end of 2.0 a little bit.
Right.
But they took Undermine from that, the song in particular, and made it their own. Like, not because it is their own, but I feel like coming to Hampton with Undermine in there, ever since then for me, like, and just seeing how they've stretched it out, and you can again feel the dance, feel the groove. It's definitely like I love to hear Undermine. It's I definitely consider a fun song. Not only lyrically, but just the up and the down of the rhythm of the song and just kind of how it flows. I always love to hear Undermine.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's like, now they've taken, friends of ours have actually made, a podcast that's taken kind of an inversion of that word, and they have go in to explore deeper themes within the Phish community. And that's, with Tom Marshall and
Yeah.
RJ and Brian and Dave, and a bunch of those guys that we've gotten to know. And it's really cool the way that they've done that. And I think that, they're mining for the gems of Phish. And it's, with this one, I always loved the lyrics to this song. And for me personally, it's somebody who, I'm currently, and this, but for everybody else, I'm currently, in recovery. I'm 7 years sober. I have been in recovery before. We got sober for the first time in '97, stayed sober for 8 years, and then kind of straight away from that for a few years. That didn't go real well.
Right.
So we got it back in 2014. But I always took the lyrics to Undermine, and it always meant something to me from like a recovery perspective. Like, I don't know, just the way that it's like, okay, like things may not have gone very well, but it's like, but they can change. Like if you're willing to change or look at it differently or change your perception or whatever the case may be, and they do that through wordplay, but it's like, it's always had a connection for me with recovery. So I've always dug that song.
Love it. And that's a powerful place to be. If you can get that reminder when you're there, on the floor in a place that you love with music that you love, to kind of feel that energy while, which is something which is powerful in your life right now, or, always.
Yeah.
That could be a huge thing. And that's just another reason why, whether it be Phish or any other band, I mean, everybody has their own journey. They have their own life experience. They have their own life lessons, hopefully. And when you get into music and you are in a live scenario, you can feel, every song is going to mean something different to every single person. I think
100%.
I'm not sure who it was, but I think I saw there was a quote somewhere that somebody was writing. So in fact, it might even have been Trey, like that he was quoting somebody else, but he said, if you're writing a song and you're trying to write it for everybody, it's going to come out a little bit weird, and you're going to have less connection to the words that are coming out. But if you try to write it for yourself or for one person, and you have one person in mind that you're actually writing it for, it tends to speak to more people, ironically, because then you're diving into like the individual, and then the individual can take it in their own direction. I think that's pretty cool.
I do too, and and one of the things that that your buddy Tom talks about on he talks about it on Under the Scales, and I love this. I actually just got finished wrapping up. I do another podcast with my friend Justin Bruce called Deeper Listening, and we
Yeah.
just did a
And by the
deep
way,
dive.
we'll have links to that in the comments below as well.
Oh, cool! Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. But we talked about Phish because we're both huge Phish fans, so it's like it comes up all the time. That's going to become like the Deeper Listening drinking game is how often we talk about Phish. But we talked about what Tom Marshall, who's obviously somebody that I would love to meet and talk to, but he's and I know that you know him and you guys are buddies, but one of the things that he said about the lyrics that he wrote was that when people would come up and talk to him and be like, "Oh, is this what you meant by this song?" Like, no matter what it was that they said, he just immediately was like, "Yes, that's it."
Yep, that's exactly it.
And I thought that's amazing. I mean, like, what a great, what a great way to approach that. First of all, it's like such a humble approach, which I really dig. But I mean, that's the truth, right? It's like what it means to you is what it means to you, and that's just a beautiful thing. Absolutely. So
which in itself, by the way, is just a cool theme to life, right? I mean, whatever it means to you, you get to choose, right?
Yeah.
There's a lyric somewhere in there, right? Somewhere in the back of my brain. You decide what it contains.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. The only rule is it begins.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it, man. So yeah, so Undermine into I'm back to Billy Breathe. So obviously we've got a lot of this 99, 98, 99 so far, starting off with Moma Dance. Obviously there was Undermine, but then Theme from the Bottom, which could be my favorite song off Billy Breathes. I'm not certain about that, but always just a really good groove. Always I don't know. I mean, obviously with the acapella at the end, it's always just feel it's kind of a round, but at the same time, it's momentous, right? The energy is building. It's not just your average round. It's building up and building up and building up with some complexities, before the end as well, right? So it's nice to kind of get it's definitely a jam vehicle, but doesn't feel like one off like when you think about it, think, oh, there's a lot of, think of it as a jam vehicle, but with many Phish songs, it actually is anyway, right? And I think the soundscape of Theme in particular is always beautiful for me. I don't know how to describe the Phish that I prefer, except for I know how it feels in my brain. Like there's like this, my favorite Phish is kind of like that. I'm not coming up with a great description for it right now because I can't even put words to it, but there's something that is melodic. Like I appreciate the melodic tones of Phish. I think more than, obviously the energy is great. Like I'm not really into the dark evil Phish. I'm not really into the vocal jams. I get the energy piece of it. I get the fun of it. I think when I was younger, I really liked the vocal jams a lot more. Now that I'm in my mid 40s, it's kind of like, it might be time to take a leak. You know what I mean? But like the melodies, like when I really think about the way that Phish speaks to my brain, it is the melodies that they hit. And I think that Theme from the Bottom, obviously the story behind it. I don't know if anybody saw the recent Welker. Did you see the recent Welker print that I did for Theme from the Bottom?
Yes, absolutely.
And he talks a lot about how all the different words, again, going back to Tom, the different words and how just the different perspectives of one person being on the top, one person being on the bottom, and how they kind of interact. So not only lyrically, but melodically, Theme is always a favorite of mine.
Yeah, to me, it was like there was kind of a connection between Theme from the Bottom and its eyes. You know what I mean? Because like there's the whole like the idea of like the mirror image that's going on in both of those songs, and and Theme from the Bottom is another one. I think for me, I was kind of a late adopter on that one. When I think of Billy Breeze, like I think of Free, I think of Taste, I think of some of those songs that, I guess that jump out. But man, the older that I get, the more that songs like Theme from the Bottom, and to your point, the way that they harmonize on the vocal parts is really cool because it's like it doesn't say the same, and it's like, and I don't know if they're. I assume that the last time that they sing the chorus that it's a key change of some kind, but it's like they sing it slightly differently, but it's very impactful and it follows their idea of like the tension and release in music, where it's like, to me, it's like the joy comes out, like the last time that they sing it. And I agree. I just think I dig it. It's such a cool song. I love hearing it live, and it's one of those ones that they could play that at every show and you would see zero complaints from me.
Right. And by the way, just as a first set, MoMA, Undermine, Theme, just to kick things off, everybody is definitely having a good time.
Oh,
there's
absolutely.
There's no question marks in the room. Like you said, it's hot, but it's hot when you're down there on the floor, but they are keeping you, focused. They're keeping you excited. And
Oh yeah, yeah, you're definitely engaged. And then they do the typical Phish thing.
right.
You know what I mean? It's like the typical Phish thing. Oops, sorry, I
I thought you,
turned
I
on
thought you,
train song accidentally.
I thought you were playing the typical. I was like, wow, that's a good
No,
idea.
yeah, that'd have been cool, right? But no, so and then they take it. It's like they've got all this energy, all this momentum going, and and then they drop into My Sweet One.
Totally.
Which is like it's kind of a breather, and it's kind of it's a way. I think that what they do with that is almost like a palate cleanser. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so from this point, we can continue with like some of the funk grooves or whatever it is that we're doing, or we can take this in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
And I think that the songs like that, when they do bluegrass and things like that, I think it's a way that they can change the tenor of the set if they want to. Using that song is the way to do it.
And just flat out fun. I mean,
Yeah.
totally agree. I love the palate cleanser concept. And I think, and of course, it's easy for me to feel this way. Like it brings me back to my youth, right? The first time I started listening to Phish, and there's only a couple out. Again, I started listening to Phish in '92, right before Rift even came out. So there was a limited compared to now repertoire, right? And so when you think about the old days, I think about the old days of hearing My Sweet One for the first time. I'll buy you a you. Like, what does this even mean? And like going to concerts as a 17-year-old kid, and like just the silliness of it and the fun of it, and the My Sweet One in particular, that they're all singing. Fishman's obviously quick on the drums. It's kind of his too. He wrote the song, he wrote the lyrics for it. And so in my own brain, I imagine that when they play that, it takes them back to their youth as well. That coming off,
For sure.
their first album, not the first album, but Lawn Boy, right?
Yeah.
Is that the opener for Lawn Boy?
Oh God, I don't
recall
remember.
either.
I'd have to look that up. Like I said, because like with Studio Phish for me, Studio Phish, I have listened to Junta plenty of times. Lawn Boy is probably the studio album that I've listened to the least. Rift, I've listened to a ton. Billy Breathes is probably the one I've listened to the most.
Yep.
Story of the Ghost, I listened to a lot.
It's
And then
good.
Sigma Oasis, I wore out after it came out. I loved Sigma Oasis. And pretty much everything in between, I've spent very little time with, the studio versions.
Not a huge
Round
big
Room
boat,
may be the exception to that. I
not a
like,
huge big boat guy.
I'm not a big boat guy. I like a lot of the songs on Big Boat. I'm not a fan of the album.
Yeah.
But I will go back and say that Round Room, I spent a lot of time with that one too. Like that to me was kind of was a really genius thing that they did during 2.0. I love that album.
Yeah, I think it's actually underrated. I think
Yeah,
we
I
don't hear
agree.
enough about Round Room. Totally.
I agree. Yeah.
But yeah, My Sweet One, kicking things into gear, just kind of in a fun way, and it also adds a different type of energy. And again, when you look at people, it's the type of thing that people just kind of love. It's a sing along, right? At the same time,
Hmm.
always, and it's right in the middle of the first set. So again, I know I keep going back to it, but even on paper, just this first set feels really, really good. I mean, you kind of get, and I just listened to it last night, and there's some fun going on. Just there's a couple times you hear Trey laughing at different things. They're kind of having a good time. Like you can feel a joyful energy in the band throughout
Yeah,
this
I
set
did.
in particular.
I definitely picked up on that as well. And there's a few things that they do in some songs, coming up that are a little bit different than the way that they do it. And when to me, it's like when Trey's being playful, the show's always good.
Right.
You know what I mean? And this particular show with Summer Tour 18 was one of my favorites of the entire tour. Obviously, there was some attendance bias,
Right.
but I mean, I really enjoyed it. The first set was just a ton of fun.
And you
And
got
then
to
they
know at this point, just real quick, I'll just say, they're amping up for what they believe is going to be Curveball at this point, right? So they're
yeah, that's true.
getting ready for a big festival. They're excited. They're in the zone. It's mid-August. Big festival is supposedly coming up, and so they're in this playful spot. They're feeling it. And Trey's from like the Philadelphia area. He's from Princeton, so right down there. I'm sure that he's probably. And again, this is all like nerdy fan imagination stuff, but I always imagine he's probably spending more time with family,
Mhm.
closer
Yeah.
family before these shows or after or in the coming days. And so there is a hometown feel for him. And they're all kind of, Fishman's from the Philadelphia area, right? Oh, no, New York.
I don't remember where he's from, but I know that there's definitely a Philadelphia connection
Yeah, I think so as well.
somewhere. And and actually, and to your point with this, Trey's dad was at this show
Nice.
because in the second set, it was so hot and so cramped down in the pit that I was like, okay, I've got to get out of here. Like it was too much for me.
I've done well.
Um,
Thank you.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like okay, this was fun and all. This has all been wonderful, but now I need to go to a seat. So I ended up hooking up with a buddy of mine that had tickets, in the pavilion, and it happened to be down like right by the friends and family section. So one row in front of us was Tom and his family, and then
Yeah.
Trey's dad. Trey's dad
Danny.
was there, who
Yeah.
is who I've talked to a couple of times, just just because I
Awesome.
happened to be in the same area that he was, and he was a nice guy. But I think that show was the first time that, because I think that Tom had to like walk like right in front of me to get over to his seat, and I spoke to him briefly, and he was a nice guy. But I think that might have been the first time that I actually like stood in front of him and said hello to him.
Well, it's better that you
Which
stand in front of him than he stands in front of you.
I know. I was like, I really hope, like, you're a giant man. Just please
Right.
have this not be your seat.
I only like the shade, but don't block the light.
Yeah, please don't block the light, man.
Cool. So my sweet one, Into Steam, by the way, and I'm sure I'll point this out at any other episodes we talk about. Steam is definitely, and you can never say favorite, but top 5 3.0 song for me. I love everything about it. I love the groove. I love the lyrics. I love the kind of the deep darkness to it. I love the ability that it escalates into. Trying to think when that came out, like how early this was, but I mean, they had it down by now, because actually they've been playing it since, I guess, like 2014, I think, even, right? Give or take.
Yeah,
So,
no, and that would have been around for a while, and because they played it for years before it ended up on Sigma Oasis, and
yep.
then like that. But I agree with you. That's one of those ones, because they used it as the New Year's gag, which
Right.
was which for me was always a fun one. And I can't remember which year that was, because my memory is
Right. Not as
like
awesome
I
as it
said.
once was.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like I got sober for a reason. You know what I mean? I did some damage, but so I can't remember exactly when that happened. But I've never ever been upset about hearing Steam.
Yeah.
And that's no exception. And I thought that the version that they put on Sigma Oasis was awesome.
Love it too. I agree. I feel like it's a little bit slower. Like you always have expectations based on the live shows, but I think my first response to the album version is totally love it. But B, it was like a little bit slower. It's a little bit hard to kind of groove. Not hard, but like it was awkward, for lack of a better term, like when I first heard it, because I was kind of waiting on a little bit of a faster pace, but always amazing. And I think, and I could be wrong, but I think that the Steam New Year's was like right around 2015 or so. So
Okay,
somewhere in there.
that sounds right. That sounds right. But yeah, and it's funny because my first impression with Steam on the album was just Fishman. It's like the groove that he establishes. That drum beat is so well recorded,
Yeah.
and I just think that for me, part of the reason I like Sigma Oasis so much is the production is so good.
Yeah.
And however it was that they mic'd Fishman to record that album, like, please do that for every album after this, because like it was perfect.
If anybody's listening out there, more Fishmen. You need more Fishmen.
We need more Fishmen. Yeah, keep micing it that way.
And then Steam goes into Train Song, which we kind of touched on earlier. I don't think I've seen a ton of Train songs. I love it. Just to our point earlier, bringing back to like listening to the album initially, that it's kind of a cool song. I love on the studio version again when you kind of hear Trey laughing at the end, like a little bit, and just the concept of it's another mic tune. He's singing kind of in the higher pitch. Just the concept, it's all very visual. You can figure just the way the rhythm goes. You can figure yourself on the train, and even just the part in the crowd where he says, we drank a little wine, and that's a great crowd response. The crowd feels good just to be there. They're enjoying the vibe of and vibing in some vino. But overall, like I don't think, and who knows, but to your point, my noggin isn't as chock full of memories as I'd love it to be. But I don't feel like I've seen a ton of Train songs.
No, I definitely haven't, and I feel like that's become more of a rarity. And usually when they slow it down to the more ballady type songs, that's usually not one that they quickly go to. So
yeah,
I was happy to, same thing. Happy to hear it.
I'll take it any day of the week. And then of course in the Haley's, right? You can never go again as old school Phish as you get. I don't know if you guys have seen. Have you, John? Have you seen? I'm sure you have the what's it called? There's a YouTube video. Maybe I'll put that in the comments below as well. But where it's the guy breaks down, he does a whole kind of mini documentary on Halley's Comet. I'm trying to think what it's called.
Oh, I've not seen that. I've not seen that. So
yeah,
put it in the show notes because I want to watch it.
Yeah, he literally spends it's like a 40-minute video. He specifically breaks down the Hampton Halleys from. Okay. I'm gonna say, it's like the Hampton Halleys. It's like 30 minutes long.
Yeah.
Right now I'm forgetting the date, but he breaks it down the whole song. But before that, he does a whole like documentary on the history of the guy who wrote it and how he met Phish and how he, Nancy. Well, he went by Nancy for a while, but and then he has another name. Again, at the top of my mind, it's all not coming to me. But definitely check it out. I've watched it several times. the anatomy of a jam is what he calls it. So he does a
Oh
couple.
yeah, no, I have seen plenty of the Anatomy of a Jam things that they've done. I haven't
Yeah,
seen the one on Haley's, but but the other ones, they break down. I think like the Camden Chalk Dust in there. They break
yep.
down. I want to say the Nassau Tweezer.
Nassau tweezer. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a few of them, and I mean, yeah, those are amazing. Like watching that, and not being somebody that plays music poorly, and doesn't really know like the theory or anything like that behind it. Watching somebody who does is
Yeah.
just fascinating for me. So that, yeah, those things are awesome.
I don't even play music at all, and I still can sit there and watch. We talk about the different note changes, and he's like, and now you'll hear Mike hit this D minor note, which changes the rest of the whole band. And you're like, oh my gosh, I would never even have thought that. I was just kind of hanging out.
Well, and it's amazing, and that was like thinking about that actually those series of videos were part of the catalyst for the other podcast that I do is like because it changed how I listen to music.
Yeah,
It's like now I'm listening to the jams to see like how they evolve, right? Like who is it that initiates the change?
yeah.
Because sometimes it's Mike, sometimes it's Fishman, sometimes it's Page. Trey does it plenty, but it's I think it's just such a cool thing that they're so locked in and they listen to each other so well that that they can, instead of hitting the third, they hit the fifth, and then the rest of the band's like cool, and then they go with it.
And
You know?
I think that's what Phish does better than any other band out there, right? They are listening. It almost feels like they're often listening just as much, if not more, than they're playing, right? They're constantly listening to what the others are doing. That was a very intentional habit that they built up in the early days. I mean, that was their other things I loved, their work ethic, right? In the early days of Phish, they talked about practicing for 8 hours every single day. Like it was their job. Like they weren't just there. They were there to create music and to learn to be the best band on the planet, which in my opinion, they are, right? But it's because they listen. And the other piece that I'll just add to that is that you point out you never know which is going to change. I in the past couple of years have really been noticing how often Page starts a shift change and takes the band in a different direction, and how it's often that he'll just do something very small, but that is in a different direction, and then Trey will just do an immediate kind of follow, like an echo, and then they go back and forth a little bit of an echo, and that's typically in the big things that I've seen where Page, like Tahoe Tweezer is a great example. Like the main super jam on there is, if you listen to it, it's started by Page. Like he starts off in one particular direction, and then Trey's kind of listening and following through and plays it, kind of mirrors it a little bit, and the rest of the band takes off. And so I absolutely love that. I know we got away from Halley's in particular, but we talk about.
No, I mean, it's a really good point. I mean, and to that point too, I think the part of the reason, because I've noticed myself paying a lot more attention to Page recently too, and I think part of the reason behind that was that he also really upgraded his piano rig.
Yeah.
And Trey talks about that a lot, in more recent interviews. But it really stands out that, I mean, he's, like Page, I don't know. I have this like weird internal habit of like, like who was the MVP of every show that I go to.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'm like, all right, yeah, Page was the MVP of this one.
Really?
And I've noticed that a lot more recently.
I have to admit, and this is something I call myself out on all the time. I don't pay enough attention to Page on a regular basis. Like in general, it's, I'm definitely a Trey and Phish guy. Like, I mean, I really go out of my way to listen to Phish because it just blows my mind, the stuff that he's doing there. The fact that what he controls, during some of these jams, I don't think any other drummer could do it the way they do. But again, they are one unit; they're locked in. But I don't give enough credit to Page, and to a point where I need to. I've called myself out on spending more time intentionally listening to him so that I can appreciate how awesome he really is. Because a lot of times you see people are just like, "Oh my gosh, Page," and I'm like, I want some of that. Like, I don't have that. Like, I haven't made the time to make that. And I know it's there. And so I'm just
for sure.
sharing with the audience that my intention for 2021 is to give Page a little bit more love and a little bit more admiration that is certainly well-deserved.
Perfect. Yeah. And he's, to go along with that, he hasn't, they announced, I think yesterday, that he has an ambient album that's coming out. And man, like, who knew that Page would have the coolest side project?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, he went to Iceland and recorded an ambient album.
I think it's called, I don't know if it's the first song or the album, but it's called maybe We're the Visitors. And so it's very spacey. It's very, I got to listen to it a little bit yesterday. So in fact, he recorded it in Iceland, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. Cool. So Halley's into the set closer of Everything's Right, which it could be a highlight of the first set, jam wise.
Oh, it was the highlight of the whole show for me.
Yeah.
This was the one on the way home. This is where I really appreciated the live Phish subscription, because this is what I listened to. Because I remember walking away from that being like, man, that Everything's Right was good. You know, and then I was like, well, let me validate that. And like listening, I can't remember the last time that I listened to the show that I was just at on the way home, but I
Yeah.
did with this one, so I could go back to the Everything's Right. And I was talking to, well, not talking to, I inserted myself into a conversation on Twitter yesterday when people were talking about, um, I guess, like the most consistent jam vehicles of 3.0. And somebody whose musical tastes are impeccable, who I follow on Twitter, was talking about how Light has the best batting average of of any song in 3.0, which is very hard to argue. My only, and I jumped in and was like, Everything's Right is up there.
Yeah.
I can't think of a single version where they don't just kill it. But it's
Yeah.
just, I think it's too new to to be in the same conversation as Light. They've been playing
Yeah.
the entire era. But yeah, man, like this is one of many great versions of that song, and it seems like it just keeps getting better.
I agree. So John's recommendation, if you're gonna listen to anything from the show, 8818, jump into the first set closer, Everything's Right. I would absolutely concur. And I think at this time it was like brand new. I think when this came out, I think that was probably right around summer 2018. Because I do remember like when it wasn't this show, but there was a show, and like the song was relatively new, and like Phish does their YouTube, they'll put up like a specific song from the show from the night before or whatever. And I remember when Everything Right first came out, that was one of the, it might have been like the first time they debuted it or something like that. And I was like, oh, really? This is what they're put on YouTube the next day. And then to your point, man, I love it. It's one of my favorite later, like we'll call it like the Phish, the Trey love songs, like the Trey, like kind of positive vibes. It's definitely up there in some of his newer
So
stuff.
I heard these songs described as like "Set Your Soul Free," "Everything's Right," "Soul Planet," like
Yep.
all of those songs. Somebody online referred to those as 3-point toll. Where it's
Like
like,
Eckhart Tolle, yeah.
and I was like, yeah, you know what I mean. So or Tolle, I never know how to pronounce his last name, but like, what's that?
I said me neither. I call him Eckhart Tolle, but who knows? That is what it is.
Yeah, who knows? But I thought that was so funny because it was like because it's true, because obviously he is inspired by the Power of Now, which is a book that I regularly give to people as gifts.
Yeah.
One that I really like. But yeah, I mean, of those songs, and I remember walking into the show thinking that we would probably either get that or Set Your Soul Free, like that we were due for one of those, because they were in like the every 3 to 4 shows rotation at that point. So we ended up getting both of them.
Both.
And they both, it's the same kind of thing. It's like, people dunk on Soul Planet a lot because the lyrics are they're tough. Like they're almost irredeemably bad lyrics. But I mean, but it's like at the same time, it's like you get it. You know what I mean? It's like the guy's happy, and it's like that's what we want. We want Trey happy. But I mean, that's another one. It's another song where it's like, man, every time they play it, the jam is amazing. So so like get over yourself about the lyrics and listen to the song, because the jams are amazing.
I saw 2 points of that. One of them was I forgot the first one already, but the second one is that I saw there was some. Oh, I know what it is. I'm gonna dial it back. So Trey's documentary, Between Me and My Mind. It was a great tweet afterwards over this. At the end of the documentary that he's teaching them how to play Soul Planet, and they're getting ready to kind of describe how the big ship is going to show up for the New Year's gag and the whole thing. And somebody tweeted something. Did I just watch a documentary on Soul Planet? Like,
yeah, exactly. Well, I remember the thought that went through my mind. It was like, that song seems like it's so like just elementary compared to so many other Phish songs.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, did he really need to go all over the place to teach this song? Like a phone, like an email could have cleared that up. You know what I mean? But it was cool, to watch him interacting, individually with the other members of the band. I thought it was. I thought that documentary was extremely well done, and and that part of it was really cool.
Cool. Yeah. So I agree. Everything's Right. I think it's an awesome jam. I listened to it again this morning before our show recording here. And so two thumbs way up. Check it out. And then we got a set break. So solid first set, 8-8-18, MoMA into Free, into Undermined, into Theme, into My Sweet One, Steam, into Train Song, Halley's, and then the set closer of Everything Right. Really, again, I know I mentioned it already, but just on paper, you can't even argue that. But to be there in the energy, summer, good weather, hot, on the least, but still midsummer 2018 was a good time to be alive, especially if you believe you're going to a festival.
Yeah, and no, exactly. And it's like, definitely that a lot of the times the summer shows, like as they lead up to, to festivals, are really just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And as they get closer to the festival, it seems like they get looser. and that was certainly true of when they played Magnaball.
Yep.
Because a lot of the shows, of course, they had Fare Thee Well, which I think really did a lot of great things for the band, Trey in
Yeah.
particular. And then that entire tour leading up to Magnaball was just incredible.
Yeah.
And I think that you were probably at the shows at the Man.
Yep.
But there was that second night of the Man. The second set of the second night of the Man was like 5-song second set.
Yeah.
And it was just like, to me, it was still probably my favorite overall set of the entire era.
Really? That's a powerful statement. I have to check it out. I was definitely there. I have to remember.
Yeah, and it was cool because I just moved to the area from New Orleans, so it was like I'm living in Phish country now. So now I don't just have to go. I don't have to drive 10 hours to go to a Southern show.
Right.
Because I would drive to Virginia,
or I would hope that they come close enough to where it is within 10 hours.
Yeah, and it's like, and now I'm like, oh, what? I'm an hour away from Philadelphia. So going to the Man, which is now unequivocally one of my favorite outdoor sheds.
Yeah.
And to have them play that show, I mean, it's just, I think you would be hard pressed to find a better 3.0 set than the second set of the second night of the Man. So that's one that I absolutely want to buy a SetListTees of that show, because, man, it was like, oh God, that second set was so good.
Yeah, and just so everybody else is paying attention, you can actually choose a setlist tee from any show you want. If you go to the website, setlisttees.com, click on any show ever, and then you just fill it out. You can either get the date, but you can also get one with a cassette on the front. And always the set list is on the back. You can get one with a Phish on the front. You can get one, there's Grateful Dead. You can choose any band you want. As long as you have the set list, or we can find the set list, is there. So, John, we will definitely get you taken care of for that one.
Yeah, man, and it's so cool because if you guys have not checked it out, do, because the website is really cool, and there's new artwork now, because I've been fortunate enough to be kind of following SetListTees and watching that grow over the past few years, and like the artwork is really cool, and just a lot of cool things going on there. So awesome. So kudos to you for such a great concept, and I hope that's something that what a great gift for anybody. I mean, I know that when we first met, you hooked me up with a show. You hooked me up with a T-shirt from the Baker's Dozen shows from Jamfield Night.
Oh, nice.
And
yes.
and it's like my daughter ruined it with blackberries, but that's another story.
Good.
But I mean, it was
listen, it was jammy, right? Blackberries.
Yeah, jam. I mean, I feel like she was on brand at least. So. But no, I mean, it's just a really cool thing. So you guys definitely got to check that out.
Cool, thanks, man. I appreciate your kind words. So real quick, before we get into set 2, John, hearing what we just talked about, we'll talk about on paper, as I mentioned a couple different times. But if you, after listening to it straight through, do you feel set 1, set 2 is more, which one is more powerful, stronger? We talked about everything, right, being the highlight of the show for you.
It's tough to say because there's a lot of cool things. I thought that the second set was slightly disjointed, and at least because it's like they throw Wingsuit and Waste into this set, and it's like you have like all this momentum coming out of, and I know that we'll probably dig into it a little bit more holistically than this, but it's like you have a different energy, and then Wingsuit kind of shifts that energy, and then Sense and Subtle Sounds, which is it really is a bust out.
Yeah.
That they love to play in that area. Like they played it at the Man the year before. Now they're playing it in Camden, and I'm just glad to catch that one a couple of times, and then to take that into Waste, and then get super dark again with Split Open and Melt. It was a little bit of a disjointed second set. Tough to say which one I enjoyed more, but I think I liked Everything's Right so much, and I liked how the set started so much with one. Yeah. That this might have been one of those shows where it's rare that the first set is my favorite of the two, especially in the later era of Phish. Now 1.0, there's plenty of times where the first set is spectacular, but I think that this might have been one where I might have actually preferred the first set.
Yeah, I would concur. I would agree. I think actually, so many things that you said obviously are spot on. So let's just jump into set 2, and I'll kind of expand upon that in a little bit, because I like the term that you used, disjointed, because the songs that they played, and we'll get into it in a minute, as standalones, depending on placement, are favorites, are great songs, or stuff that I can always appreciate. To your point, the bust out of Sense and Subtle Sounds, I always am happy to hear that. But it was a different type of energy. So what else? So we start off with Julius. Set 2 starts off with Julius, which I don't know that I've ever seen another second set Julius opener.
No, that did seem strange, and I know that there are people out there that will dunk on Julius. I'm not one of those people. It's fun every time they play it.
I
so
agree.
Like I'm into it,
Yep.
And I think it's a fun set closer, and I think it's just I think it's a good one. So it's I was happy to hear it, and it kept some of the fun energy of the show going.
Totally. Well, and what I was gonna say is I feel like they took the energy from everything's right at the end of the second set, started off the first set with it. So Julius, just to kind of get the crowd grooving, feeling it a little bit more probably jammier than because it was the opener of the second set than normal, right? So it had a little bit of an extended play there, which is cool. Good energy. And then the Carini, so then right into Carini for the second song, which is always continuing the energy, right? All of a sudden, no matter
Huge
what you
crowd
think,
pleaser.
yeah, no matter what you think of Julius, and I think everybody, I don't, like you said, people dunk on it, but nobody dislikes it when they're there at the show, right? Everybody's going to feel it and love it and rock with it, right? Because it's a rockin' tune. It's a rockin' Trey tune. I think he really likes it a lot. But this Carini in particular, I talked earlier about how I'm not a huge fan of Evil Phish. And what I meant by that is like the really long, dark lights, like, for an extended amount of time. And often Carini gets referred to as Evil Phish. And it's kind of a fun thing to make memes about and that type of thing. But really, it's just got a cool, heavy opening, right? And it is, there's good energy behind it. But I don't think it's really that dark of a song. A lot of the versions I love are the opposite. And this one in particular, I was listening to last night, like the second half of it expands into like one of those, type, what is it? You don't know it's Carini anymore. Type 2, type 3, whatever it is.
Yeah. So, and I think that kind of the definition with type 2 is if there's been enough of a tonal shift where it's like they're not playing the same chord configure, the same chords as the original song.
Yeah.
So when they've modulated it enough to where there's to where they're in a different space entirely, it's considered type 2 at that point. And they do that a lot with Carini, and that's one of those ones that it's like, I've definitely have some favorite versions of that song. I've never ever heard them start playing Carini and ever been upset. I never will be. It's one of those ones that open up every single second set with Carini, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
My only complaint about this one is that it was 11 minutes and not 20. Like they could have kept it going.
Yeah, in fact, I agree. So that goes totally to what I was kind of going to step into. So right here, John, right here. I think, and so we talked about the what did you call it?
the type 2?
No, the Eckhart Tolle version.
Oh yeah, the 3-point toll.
3-point toll, yeah. So I would say "Set Your Soul Free" is one of my least favorite 3.0 songs. There's a cool guitar riff and everything. I just, you can't love them all. So I would say out of the 3-point toll song, this is probably my least favorite. I don't know why. It just doesn't resonate with me, whatever. So to my point of like, okay, preferring set 1 over set 2, right off the bat, to have such a I love the Carini. The Carini could be the highlight of my second set for this one, I think, just because of the way they played it. And to your point, like that second half of it really definitely hit type 2, definitely more melodic, definitely not the same as, which I love the beginning anyway. But then to all of a sudden kind of shifted into Set Your Soul Free. For me, if I have to be, part of this, like I don't want to always be, I love everything about Phish, because I do, but we want to add some criticism. I don't know, critical eye is probably a different way to say it. I will say that I don't even like to use the term disappointing, but from that Carini into, Set Your Soul Free was kind of like a slowdown for me. Like that would have been the time where I would have gone to the bathroom probably. I might have gone to grab a beer or whatever. So for me, it's okay. It's fine. That's kind of how I feel about Set Your Soul Free in general. But again, it's Phish. So I'm not, I'm happy to be there.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the ones that, again, like from a lyrical standpoint, is not my favorite stuff that they've done. But they tend to jam that one pretty well, and I think it's in a key that they all like to kind of go off on, and it's, and that's something that they've done some cool things with it. This particular version kind of fizzles out a little bit, and and again, I just think that they had a difficult time, maybe a more difficult time kind of establishing the energy that they wanted, or it could just be that what they were feeling shifted. Right. And I think that happens through, mid-set plenty of times where they might have a rager going on and then Trey's like, we're going to throw a wingsuit in.
Right.
Which is a great song. And it's like, I love Wingsuit as a song, but totally. In the middle of a second set, I'm like, why are we doing Wingsuit?
Well, and to be honest with you, this is, one of my perspectives is that, and what they play is really none of our business. Like what they want to play is none of our business, right? So whatever, it's their show, they're allowed to do whatever the heck they want to at any time. We get to enjoy it or not, and that's our business, right? So it's kind of like what somebody else says about you is none of your business. It has everything to do with them and nothing to do with us. So same thing. If Phish wants to play, Set Your Soul Free into, I don't know, I'm trying to come up with something funny. then they're welcome to do that. Doesn't matter.
Well, and it's funny because if you listen to the audience recording of this show, somebody down there, it's at some point in here, and I can't remember if it's in the first set or the second set, but they yell out, "Play whatever the fuck you want."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, like that's what they're going to do anyway. But yeah, thank you. You know, like validate that.
I've seen that sign actually. I think as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to your point, into Wingsuit, right? So we've got Julius, which is kind of Julius and Carini, great opener. Into Set Your Soul Free, slows it down a little bit. And I would concur. Like I love the song Wingsuit. I think off the album Fuego, from a musically written and recorded, like again going back to the studio version, it's a powerful song. I love the message behind it. It's about freedom. It's about choice. It's about deciding who you want to be, how you want to live your life, how you want to show up. That you have a choice in any given moment. What does it go? You fly where you choose, or something like. I'm sorry, I'm throwing it right. So I love the message behind it. I love the Pink Floyd. Like, I don't typically compare Phish to any other band. In fact, most often than not, I'm comparing other bands to Phish.
Yeah.
And this is the one song that I think they recorded this with Bob Ezra, right? And he did some work with Floyd. And so you can feel the influence there, I think.
It definitely has a very Floyd influence. And you had talked about the YouTube video for Halley's for the Anatomy of a Jam. And I hope that you have seen the YouTube video where there's somebody who is actually wearing a wingsuit with a GoPro camera.
Yeah.
And that is queued up with this song, and it's like the unofficial music video,
really,
to the song, and it is incredible.
It's beautiful.
Because the guy, he's standing on the side of a cliff and jumps off as the song starts.
And is he wearing? Is he a Phish nerd too? Like, does he have donuts? I've seen somebody with like a wingsuit that has donuts on it. Type of
this one doesn't. I think it's like solid color. So I don't, but it's just something. And I don't know that there was ever an intention when the guy took the video to add Phish's song to it. It just happens to really work.
Maybe somebody else added it to it.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So the two of those things paired up is really cool. I will send you a link to that so that the link can drop into the notes below.
We'll throw that one in there as well. But so beautiful song. It doesn't typically, I don't know. So correct me this, John, if I'm. I mean, they don't really jam too much on it. There's the one part at the end of the song. It's already kind of a longer song.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of go into more of a structured jam than other songs. They don't really typically take this too far out before they kind of wind it down. And then Mike obviously gets out the drill for the ending. So.
Well, and with this one too, I mean, 9 minutes seems like kind of a long version of that song to me.
Yeah.
Like because I know that I've seen it a few times, but I kind of remember this one being like, all right, this was a little bit of a different wingsuit than usual.
Cool.
So it's a little bit of a longer version. I mean, and at 9 minutes, I think it's like the third longest song in the whole set.
Right.
Fourth longest.
Pretty second. Yeah. I mean, I think it's beautiful. Again, it's one of these weird things, right? So if you're looking at, and this is the cool part about being a Phish nerd, if you're looking at the songs as individuals, you can find something that you love about every single one of them. If you look at the show as a whole, you can find something you love every one of them. If I'm looking to be critical or have an observation that might be different compared to other shows, I could say that, the Set Your Soul Free into Wingsuit is kind of a slower downer just in general, for especially, like I said, so now that we've got 20, 30 minutes, right, give or take, of kind of this, some stuff that I'm not like, I can't wait to see this. And then in a sense, it's Subtle Sounds, which starts off slow as well.
Right, but yeah, it definitely doesn't end that way.
Right, and is a bust out, right? It is like, I mean, literally, that's like the end of 2.0. I always think back, whenever I hear that song, I always think back to the It versions in particular. Like that's kind of like, the essential Sense and Subtle Sounds for me. And even just the album. I mean, I do like the album Undermined. Like, I mean, it's just those versions.
No, 100%. And I guess like the breakdown where the song starts to speed up. Like I remember like just painstakingly going over the chords of that song and trying to learn it so I could play it because I love it so much. Like I really, 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 really like Sense and Subtle Sounds. And it's one of those ones that it's like, I'm kind of glad that it's not one that's in the regular rotation. Like I like the fact that it's played a little bit more rarely. I think it keeps it special.
And it is a bust out. Did Trey play it at the Beacon Jams? I think he played it once out of nowhere. I think I was really surprised. Like, to your point, it's like one of those things that you wouldn't really expect to hear, especially in that type of a setting. I'll have to double check on that, but I'm 87% confident that as well.
Well, I mean, he did that with so many things, right? I mean, like, the fact that they did, You Enjoy Myself, like Harry Hood, you know what I mean? Like with strings, like, come on, you know what I mean? Like it was great.
Awesome stuff. So Wingsuit, innocence and subtle sounds, and then this one definitely, like you said, as they all do, picks up, but then slows back into Waste. And again, I feel almost strange, like it's like I feel like my energy was like, second set was mad, but really, I always love to hear Waste. Again, I think it's just the groupings of these, right?
Yeah.
But I don't mind. Not that I would, but I mean, I think it's a beautiful song. Again, it takes back to Billy Breathe. So right, we're going back to that late '90s era, and it's just a good song. It's a good vibe, and at some point, you can, we talked about earlier, be the individual and feel like Phish is singing to us, right? They come waste your time with me. Yes, I'd love to do that, right? So it's always a good song. If you're going to do a ballad, I'll take Waste any day of the week.
Yeah, no, and I like the song, and again, I mean, to your point, I think that it's one of those things that it's like I really like Waste, I don't like it in the fourth quarter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like keep Waste in the first set where it belongs.
Yeah.
Or throw it in as an encore or something like that. But it's like to me, and that was kind of the thing for me was that the middle part of this set was kind of like I wish I didn't have a less juvenile way to describe this, but it was like kind of like just like a boner killer. You know what I mean? Where it was like, yeah, it's like you're cruising along and it's like, all right, you know what I mean? It's like I don't hate this, but it's definitely not, it's definitely not like if I had written the set list, this is not what I would have chosen myself.
I wouldn't now go. Waste, like, remember that, Waste is playing, you're like, that everything is right. It was pretty fire.
Yeah, exactly. I'm back in that land now.
Sweet. So, but then they pick things back up. They go into Melt, split open and Melt, which it gets rocking. It's pretty heavy at certain points, as many it can be. But this one in particular, that was definitely, I think I can say about this one that it gets heavy. It stands out as kind of, a darker at certain points, split open and Melt.
Well, and I think that they've used this song in 3.0 to really like as a catalyst to get weird.
Yeah.
And it's like, because I remember very specifically like at the Met, it was one of the songs that they played at the Met that really stood out as being like just like really bizarre in a great way.
Yeah.
But it's like they took, and they have used this to take some of the weirdness that they like to do and, and kind of harness. And to your point, it is, more of like the evil Phish or the darker Phish type stuff. But I'll take a split open and Melt, play it at whatever show you want to. Even the version in Coventry, which was, such a disaster of a show, but man, the split open and Melt from Coventry is amazing.
Yeah.
So this was no exception. I love the split open and Melt. And then, and again, I know that I think it depends on what era fan you are. How exactly you feel about Character Zero. There's plenty of people out there that like when Character Zero comes on, they're like, oh, come on. I have never, ever not been excited about Character Zero. I love that song. You know what I mean? It's always a rager. It's a perfect set closer. Like just to me, like I'll take it all day long. I love it.
And just as silly and simple as it sounds, just the power of the comeback in when they're just like, ba, ba, ba. That is like, you can feel that. If you can't feel that, you don't want to stick around for just coming out of that. And Trey, there's certain songs, 46 Days comes to mind, where he's just like, is doing the solo thing on purpose. Like it is intentionally like a guitar rock song. And there's parts of Character Zero that is just, definitely like, I just got chills actually, just thinking about it because I'm a huge, like Bug. Some people also say, maybe to your point, depends on what era fan you are. Mm-hmm. But I hear a lot, same thing about Bug, especially as I said, close. People like, oh, really? I was like, no, man, I listen to
Bug's a great one. Yeah, exactly. Play Bug all you want. Farmhouse gets dunked on a lot, you know what I mean? But there's a lot of great stuff that's going on that album too. Totally. Bug to me probably being my actual highlight of that album being Bug.
Yeah, I would agree. And real quick, before we move on, just to finish up the segment, I just want to go back. I was looking at our text messages today. I just was kind of going through our text chain, and you mentioned the Met. And I remember you had gotten, like, that was the hardest ticket to get in 10 years, right? Because of the smallest venue and everything. And I know you had gotten a ticket through a friend. And I didn't have one until the day of. And I'm bringing this up because I just saw in our text conversations, it was like me on that day saying, hey, man, I got a miracle. I just got miracled. I'll see you at the show. And you're like, I don't know why, but I knew that you'd be getting in. I'll see you there, that kind of thing. And so I just want to celebrate your intention for me getting in the show because really, that was December 2019, right? So that was really one of the last shows that I saw besides the New Year's run, and such an intimate, powerful setting to be there. And so thanks for the positive vibes. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. That was and that, I know, a lot of people complained about that entire tour really. like said that
A
it
fall
was
tour.
kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, kind of lackluster. There were some good shows. I loved that show at the Met.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
when
totally.
they came out and after doing Hello My Baby and went into Tweezer,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? And it kind of became like a Tweezer fest. I thought that I had so much fun.
Yeah.
Part of that is that, because of my good friends, he is the master of like the master of the effortless lottery. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if it's good and it happens to somebody, it's going to happen to Brian.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't want to say effortless in the sense that he doesn't deserve it, because he's a great dude
Yeah.
and like every great thing that happens to him, he absolutely deserves. But I've been the fortunate recipient of a lot of the good things that have happened to him,
Yeah.
including being in a private booth for the New Year's run. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an embarrassment of riches to hang out with Brian. Um, but I mean, this was one of those ones where it was like he knew somebody that he knew somebody that was important in the music industry because of the job that he does, and we ended up in their box. So we
For the New
were,
Year's run.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
this was at the Met.
Oh,
So
okay.
we were
Really?
we were yeah. So we were on the second tier in the
Yep.
box. It was like, so the stage was here and
Yep.
we were right here. So every picture that you see of the Met, if it's a little bit wider than the stage and you can see the balcony, I'm
Yeah.
in them.
Right.
So it's so now it's like every time I see a picture of the Met, I'm like, that's me.
Yep, there I am. It's like
Yeah, exactly.
that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where
Yeah,
he's like pointing, yeah, that's me. You know what I'm talking
yeah,
about?
it's
Yeah.
exactly like that. Every time I see something, like if like AZN Picks or whatever, put something up like all of her stuff because of where she was. Like
Yeah.
every time I'm like, I'm in it.
Yep,
I'm
yep,
in
yep.
it.
Listen, Andrea, you're gonna have to stop taking pictures of me. So many really
Yeah, yeah. Right.
try to focus
No,
on the band if you can.
yeah. I mean, and talk about I've actually not met her personally. I've just interacted with her online. But what a great human being that is, and
Yeah, I met her a bunch of different times. So yeah, she's super huge. If you we'll put links to her stuff in the I don't know, it's not the comments, the description below is probably a better way to say
yeah.
it.
No, but
Uh,
I mean, she's amazing, and her photography is amazing, and I also dabble in some photography stuff. That's a
hey,
big joy for me, and she whether she realized it or not was very encouraging of that.
nice.
So she's somebody that probably, like, if you said my name, would be like, I have no idea who that is, but it's somebody who has had a very positive influence on things that I have ventured to do. So that's a cool thing.
Well, listen, John. Now that you've got your deeper listening podcast, you've got casting a wider net. Everybody's gonna know your name sooner than later. So
Now
don't
we'll get it out there. Then
baby
we'll
steps.
see what happens.
Character Zero closer. I'm a huge fan. You know, melt into Character Zero is not a bad way to end any set, as far as I'm concerned, right?
For sure.
So we'll get that. I would say a upswing in the end of the set. And then Susie, I gotta admit, man, I'm a so-so Susie guy. I like it. The first time I ever heard Susie Greenberg was at my first show, July 25th, 1993. I never actually, I feel like, anyway, I didn't really recognize it when I was there for the first time. So I didn't know it that well. And so I like it a lot. But in a sense, the horns, like versions with the giant country horns or any horns, have jaded me. Like I love Susie with horns, and without it, it almost feels like it's lacking to me. As an encore, I don't know, this is a terrible term to use, but first it comes to mind. It's kind of almost like a basic for me. It's like it doesn't feel like an encore that feels like a celebration of the night. I mean, it probably is
More
for
like they're just kind of phoning it in.
yeah. I don't even like to say that, but yeah, it's almost like I'm sure it's great for them because they remember where they were when they wrote it, and people in the crowd love it, and obviously, Dude of Life is probably there, and he's loving it as well. Like he knows why he wrote it,
Yeah.
and all these different things. And so, who am I to say? But that's why we're here. So I would just say, if to be honest with you, if I didn't have to hear Susie Greenberg, it wouldn't be like it's not on the top of my list of songs that I would want to hear in a whole tour. If I went a whole tour with no Susie Greenberg, I wouldn't be unhappy about it. I'm not celebrating that it's not there, but you know what I mean. I'm like that middle of the road. Like it's fine. It's cool. You know.
Well, and for me, it was one of those songs that the in the early part of my of my getting into Phish, I loved Susie because
Yeah.
it was high energy and it was and it was fun because Fishman was a doing the Fishman thing
Yeah.
during the song
Neurologist.
and yeah, you know what I mean, and all that stuff. It was always a really fun one, and it's one of those ones that it's like I never see Susie coming. You know
Right.
what I mean? And then it's like it's just one of those that just
Unless they
never.
play Oki Pa first, right? Then you
Right.
you
You know
can
what I
go.
mean? Right. But it's like it's never one of those ones. If I'm trying to, internally anticipate the set list, I'm never thinking Susie.
Yeah.
And it's one of those ones that it's like, it's fun enough, but it's like, if I had a really, really difficult like parking situation or like an early morning the next morning and they started playing Susie in the encore, I might dip, you know.
What?
I might head out.
Yeah.
So, but to get a beat on the traffic, and it's not
Yeah.
that I hate it. It's like, I mean, there's no Phish that I hate.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's just one of those ones. It's like after seeing a ton of shows, it's like, all
Yeah.
right,
I agree.
I know that this is not going to go into some kind of space where everybody's going to be talking about the Camden Susie Greenberg.
Right.
So you know what I mean. So like, I can get out of here for this one.
High fives all around. Yeah. So overall, John, and we haven't really talked about any type of a rating, but so let's talk in millions of stars here, John. If you could say 1 to 5 million stars that you would give this show, where does it fall on the spectrum for you?
It'd be about in the 3/4 range. You know what I mean? Like whatever 3/4 of the way to 5 million stars is.
Nice. So
Like somewhere in there. It's like to me the show is like a pretty solid 7.
all
You
right.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was a fun show. I love the first set. There's a good jam that's in it. You know what I mean? Like it's not record breaking, but it was a fun show from that tour, and it was one of the better shows from that tour.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like if somebody was like, hey, now that we're coming hopefully towards the what looks like maybe the beginning of the end of the pandemic, and somebody was like, hey, the first show that you're going to go back to is going to be exactly 8/8/18
Right.
from Camden, I'd be like, yes, I'm there.
High fives. I'm in.
Yeah,
Consider me there.
exactly. Let's do it.
Love it. Yeah, I would agree. I'll say 3.7 million stars sounds about right for
Okay.
now. Real quick before we say that, even just that tour, I will point out, right, because like we said, Curveball didn't happen, but then Kazavat Vax came that following tour, right? So I mean,
Well,
really,
yeah, I mean, and then things like that took the band in a really, really cool direction.
yeah,
And it's like, it kept, one of the things that I think that festivals does for the band is it keeps them in a very creative space.
yep,
And I think that Casvat came out of a very creative space.
yeah,
And it kept that creative energy going, to where it made 2019 what 2019 was. And
yeah.
and I just thought the whole thing was really cool. So like I really liked the Casbah Vax stuff, and I like the tour that surrounded it a lot.
Yeah.
And just even that run, I think it was the November 1st show, because they played in Las Vegas. I think that the Halloween set was either at the beginning of the run or the second show of the run. It was in kind of an odd placement, which from where is typical. But I remember that the last show of that run being like, now that the big one it was out of the way,
Yeah.
and they kind of took a step back and relaxed. I remember that being like just a really sensational show.
Every time we keep saying that, I'm always like, okay, I'm gonna do that show.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so let's put that one down.
And maybe I'll just make a note here. Maybe our next show will be that man show that you were particularly speaking of, that first.
Yeah, it was a good one. I mean, that was I think that one was a lot of fun.
Cool. Maybe we'll dive into that. So we're going to move into the second half of the show. So now we will continue to cast the wider net. The first, obviously, we brought in all of our Phish. Hope you guys enjoyed that recap. Any thoughts you have on it? If you were at the show, let us know in the comment section below. Any thoughts about it, let us know in the comment section below. If you agree with us, you disagree with us, you hate it, you love it. Think about thoughts about Susie, thoughts about everything's right, whatever it is. Tell us what you think. We'd love to interact. We'll definitely be responding to any comments below, so please feel free to do that. And so now the second half of the show is where we cast the wider net. And again, big thanks to you, John, for I've kind of put the weight on your shoulders of choosing this different music. I mean, I know you're kind of doing it anyway, so it's not that heavy of a weight. But I am blessed because I wouldn't choose this music. I wouldn't know where to begin. I wouldn't know where to look. And so the fact that you have agreed to show up and to come up with these different things for me to kind of dive into is a blessing to me, and I hope for our listeners as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, so for sure. I mean, and that's something that so I got into Phish in '95, and was basically in 1995, 96, like in that era was when my listening to other things really kind of fell by the wayside. Because I got really big into Phish, I got really big into the Grateful Dead, And then very shortly after that, really big into Widespread Panic also because I lived in the South and you could see them, every weekend.
Yeah.
Um, and that was kind of where my musical energy shifted. And then Phish went on hiatus, and I was like, okay, it's like, and I remember at the beginning of that, like listening back to favorite shows and stuff like that, but really more like wanting to hear new music from Phish, and then remembering like, oh wait, there was a whole lot of other music that I liked before all of this happened. So let me dig into that. Let me see what's going on now.
Yeah.
And it was the first, like, stepping my toes into the new music waters again. And it's like you always hear people say, oh, the music nowadays isn't as good as the music when I was younger. And I think it's become kind of a life's mission to make sure that people understand that that's not true. That there's a lot of really really good music that's going on at all
Totally.
times. You just got to go and look for it. Um,
And to that
so we
point,
chose it.
oh, I'm sorry, just real quick.
I
I'll
don't know.
just
Go
say
right ahead.
that's the thing is, and for me, as a guy who kind of gets set in my ways, is I don't go look for it. I agree. I know it's out there, but there's never ever been a better time to be able to find music, right? I mean, if even 30 years ago, whatever it is, you would have had to go sit there and scroll through record out or tape stores and try to find stuff. You heard what was on the radio or MTV, but that was it. You kind of had to go to stores and try to listen to stuff. But now you can literally at the click of a button, you could spend 17 hours on the internet and find 100 different new bands without and you could actually hear the whole thing. So it's almost an obligation for us now, which, and I truly believe that. Like, part of the reason I wanted to kind of create this project to begin with is because I'm not doing my life justice by only staying in this box. And by this box, I don't just mean Phish as much as still just the jam scene. I mean, I have like about 100 Pandora stations, and I do listen to a lot of different things, but they typically seems to repeat itself a lot. And so I've decided that it's an obligation for me to step outside my comfort zone and find some new music so that I can continue to learn more about it and enjoy the spectrum of music that's actually out there. I will say before we even just jump in real quick is that there's a number of bands that just in the last year, and this was the reason that you were the first person that came to mind when I wanted to do this, that you actually introduced me to. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank, and I probably would have been smart to write them down, but I know Black Pumas is an example.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. That was a fun one.
I don't want to say My Morning Jacket, but I do want to say that we've had good conversations about that. A buddy of mine, Ken, introduced me to My Morning Jacket. I know they're not that introductory, but I hadn't really listened to them because I was in the zone. But anyway, there's a number of different bands that I've been introduced just because of you, and so I'm excited to continue that journey. So,
Yeah,
so
I mean, and for me, what I discovered kind of in the process of doing that is that I like a lot of music that is not in the quote unquote jam band scene.
yeah,
And a lot of the other music that is in the jam band scene, I'm lukewarm about a lot of it. But when you start listening to like a lot of indie stuff and a lot of folk music and things like that, like I'm really, really, really into it.
yeah,
And that has expanded more recently to now I've started to listen to more like ambient music and so I've started to kind of figure out, I guess for myself, that there are different situations where different music fits what's going on.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And for me, it's like if I'm out like walking in the woods or something like that, then like ambient music really, really works in that scenario. Whereas it's like if I'm trying to cook dinner, I'm not putting Brian Eno on. You know what
right,
I mean? It doesn't work out for me. So kind of what we did here is I chose a couple of albums that I liked that have come out recently. All of these have come out, I would say, within the past 6 weeks, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I tried to make it to where it was, there was at least a little bit of a variety in what we were listening to. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. We're going to talk about a band called the Middle Kids they are from Sydney, Australia, and I was actually talking online today with some people on a thread that on Twitter that's from the account that we tweet about the other podcast that I do with deeper listening. We tweet about that, and somebody, I believe they live in Australia, was commenting about it, and I recommended this band, as somebody that they should check out. And then we got into a discussion about how many cool bands have come out of Australia, and there's a lot of untapped music from that country.
yeah.
Um, Not
Maybe
only
that'll
is
be
it
a
a
whole theme one day. Maybe just all the bands that we cover will be from there. That's so
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and with it also being somewhere that I really want to visit, that happening to really love the music scene there is another one that's cool.
bonus.
So the first album that we dug into was from a band called Middle Kids. This album is called "Today We're the Greatest," and it was released on March 19th. So pretty new release. Today we're recording. Today is April 8th. So this was released about 3 weeks ago. Um, they're a trio from Australia. It is the best way that I can describe it, I guess, is it's definitely indie rock, but it also has kind of some folk elements to it, to my ear. The members of the band are Hannah Joy, David Day, excuse me, Harry Day, and Tim Fritz. And I believe that Tim Fritz and Hannah Joy have a child together. I'm not sure if they're married, but I think that they have a child together in a relationship. It's their second full length record. And what's cool about this one to me is when I listened to it, I was like, oh, this is a really cool like pandemic record, right? Like because so much music is coming out right now that was recorded as the pandemic was going on, and so when I started doing a little bit of research to talk about it, found out that this was recorded pre-pandemic, and they did all the mixing during the pandemic. So these songs were actually written before the pandemic happened, and I thought that was cool. Um, that it's there was such a new release that was recorded pre-pandemic. Um, so there was a lot of songs on this album that I really liked. The entire album as a complete piece of music I really liked. I thought that
Yeah.
it was very very consistent throughout. But that's kind of the background, I guess, of the band. So Ryan, what were some of your thoughts about this one?
Well, I have to say that going into this project, John, I was worried that I was going to be like, I just love everything, and like I was going to come across as this guy that just because I'm in general I love life. I'm generally a person who loves to be here now and enjoy uh, being curious about how I can serve the moment in any given moment and like the look for everything. So that being said, clicking the albums that we talked about, uh, I didn't love it. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't dislike it at all. I definitely have a favorite song. I think my favorite song on the album was Summer Hill. That one
Okay.
stood out to me and really definitely resonated at some point. It's got a little bit of a Cranberries slash 10,000 Maniacs, but sound, not necessarily the vibe, but the sound, like with the female singer. So there was aspects of it that stood out that I could say that I liked, and I could probably would be to your point. This would be good background music, maybe for making dinner or that type of a thing. In fact, it was funny while I was listening to it, and my wife, knowing my general taste, she happened to walk in. She's like, "What are you listening to?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm getting ready for casting a wider net." She's like, "Well, this is music that I would listen to," and I was like, "Yeah." I was like, I could totally get that vibe, right? So it's nothing that I would say out of the. This is the best way for me to say it. I think out of all the music that I think that you've introduced me to, I would say this would be on the lower side of my preferences to go back to.
Okay. All right. Well, no, I mean, and that makes sense. And this is something that for me, I made kind of one of the things that my wife pointed out to me was that, I don't listen to a lot of bands that have female artists or female vocalists. And so
Yeah,
she was like, so when I really, really started getting into like digging into to new music, you know, same kind of thing. She was like, could you recommend something that I would like? You
yeah,
know what I mean? And like I introduced her to like Saint Vincent and and a few other things like that. But I did realize that was kind of like a hole in my resume. So I've actively sought that out and
awesome.
have not been disappointed as a result of doing that.
Yeah,
Um,
and
like
real quick, I'll just interject. Like that was almost again part of my and this whole other thing. I'll just say that this project I love about it is gives me opportunity to kind of stretch the comfort zone, right? So I think it's certainly worth a two or three more listens to really get an honest opinion, right? You listen to something once, you're not necessarily going to love it as much as you will eventually. Even the first time I've heard certain Phish songs, right, or whatever, it's like you don't
yeah,
love it the same thing. So I certainly give credence to that, and I also want to say, to your point of not having a strong background of a lot of female vocal led bands uh, to automatically go to the Cranberries and maybe not so much 10,000 Maniacs is just Natalie Merchant in general. Some of her solo stuff is probably a better way to compare it a little bit. And then
okay.
again, both of those tie into just the vocal style, not necessarily the musical style. Some Cranberries a little bit. But that being said, I think there's an opportunity for me to appreciate it on a different level if I give it another listen or two.
Yeah, for sure. And and I like that you picked up on Summer Hill as being because that was one of the ones that I really liked from the album. The single on the album was "Are You for Me," and this album actually got to I believe number 5 on the charts in Australia,
Nice.
which is a pretty good showing. I liked "Stacking Chairs" from the album. "Bad Neighbors" was the first song, and then "Cellophane Brain" was the second. I really like both of those as a 1-2 punch.
I did like
Um,
Bad Neighbors as well, by the way. I'll say that too.
Yeah, and it's I thought that it was kind of a cool thing, and then and I mean part of the way that the band got some I guess notoriety was that they opened up for other bands that I really love, which is the War on Drugs. I'm not sure how familiar you are with them, but if you're not, then we will dig into those guys soon.
Yeah, I know of
Um,
them, but not enough to speak about them.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that my favorite album, actually, I can say unequivocally, my favorite album of the last decade was from the War on Drugs.
Nice.
Which is just they've got some amazing stuff going on. They also opened up for the Local Natives, which is a band that I've listened to some, but I know that the Local Natives have been influenced by a lot of things that I really like. So I think that both of those bands have a pretty big audience. So, being able to open up for them is definitely something that got them a little bit of notoriety.
Yeah,
And, I like their first album as well. I definitely prefer this album to the first one. But yeah, so hopefully that's something that people will check out and, and take a listen to.
totally.
Um,
And
I
by
thought
the
it was a
way,
good one.
I'm going to, there'll be a set list T. You'll see it in the description, but there's going to be a set list T for one of their shows. So if you're finding this show because you're a fan of the Middle Kids, you want to, maybe you've been to one of their shows, you can check out the set list T that we'll have in the link below.
Yeah, right on, right on. So that's really cool. And then we
Oh,
got
real quick
into,
before we move
yeah, yeah.
forward, I also want to say, and this might be a lesson for me for next time. The first thing that I did was the album is called "Today We're the Greatest." I just looked it up on YouTube when I first heard about it, and actually there's an official video of "Today We're the Greatest," and it's a cool video. It's like the lead singer, that the chick is kind of out in nature and she's singing and kind of doing some stuff, and there's a piece to me that wishes I didn't watch the video.
Okay.
Because visual can be distracting in some capacity. I try not to be a judgmental human being, but there's a piece to me that is like, oh, I feel like that almost set the tone for my opinion for the rest of the album by watching this one video, as opposed to just listening to it straight out. And so that might be a lesson for next time.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things too that I've done with the deeper listening podcast is trying to not look up like how it was rated and how it was like critically taken before listening to it.
Yeah.
And I made the mistake of we just did an episode on Animal Collective, which I was totally almost entirely unfamiliar with before doing the episode, and I did make the mistake of going in and looking at how like Pitchfork rated the albums, which fortunately did not actually sully my opinions. So I believe what is a fairly controversial take on what my favorites were from that band. But
Cool.
yeah, I mean but that can definitely do it. It's a lot of times if I look at how something was looked at critically, it might be something where I like it less because it got beat up in the press. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think it's a good practice to go into it fairly blind.
As blind as possible.
Yeah,
Cool.
for sure. And I mean, I did that with Ghost of the Forest. I mean, that
I
was
was just thinking, saying I did completely as well. I just showed up. I didn't want to hear anything. I literally just showed up there and listened to the thing. That's my favorite as of today. My favorite Trey experience. And I've seen Tab a ton of times. Goes to the Forest, just the vibe, the energy, the sound. Trey on stage, the way he was feeling the music, how powerful it was for him. Little side note, my favorite Trey experience outside of Phish.
Yeah, and that's something that watching them do that for the Beacon Jams was really cool.
Yeah.
And it's cool because it's like one of the things that I like so much about Phish, and I know that this is the non-Phish portion of the show, but one of the things that I like so much about it is that they're so transparent about like why they have written certain things or what they like, or you know what I mean. So it's like you have a lot of access to that band that you just don't get with other bands.
Yeah.
And I think that that's cool because like knowing the story behind it helps.
Yeah.
So like understanding like what was going on with what was going on with his friend at the time when he was writing this music really helped set the tone for what you were listening to, and I guess like the emotional nature of what it was that you were listening to. Yeah, for sure. Really, really cool. So the next band that we're going to jump into is from Little Rock, Arkansas. And I would, I hope that somebody listens to this and knows more about this band than I do. I tried to do some research. There's not a lot of information about them that's out there. I believe that they have some other music, but the name of the band is the Libras. And the way that I understand this, at least, from now, is that there's a guy named Jason Weinheimer who lives in Little Rock, who this was his brainchild, and he brought together a bunch of studio musicians and put this record out. And I cannot say enough good things about this album. I would say that probably the last album that I talked about, I would probably, in my personal 10-point rating scale, would probably rate it at about a 7, somewhere in there. If it's above a 5, I'm going to listen to it and enjoy it. And that was probably a 7. This one is way up there. I
Yeah.
really, really, really like this album. Um, and
And
I
how did
guess
you hear about them to begin with? Just
well, so and I'm glad that you said that, and I hope that somebody watches this and takes credit for it. It was one of those days where it was a new music Friday because the new releases come out on Friday. I dug through what Pitchfork was writing about. I looked through the different streaming services for like recommended albums. There wasn't a whole lot going on, so I was looking for recommendations. So I just put it out there on Twitter like, hey, any new music that you guys would recommend, and somebody came back and recommended this band, and they put out the teaser track that was available on like Spotify or Apple Music or whatever.
uh
Um, was Quiet Part Loud, and I listened to that, and I was like, hell yes, I would have listened to the rest of this album right now. And the rest
yeah,
of it wasn't out yet, so I had to do the thing where it was like it'll download the day that it appears.
yeah.
But I liked it right away, and I never could figure out who it was. Like I can't remember, and I tried to scroll back, and it was too long ago. But I can't remember who it was that recommended this. But I kind of had the impression that they may have had possibly a personal connection with the band.
Yep.
Um, but man, everything about this album I like. I mean, like this is 100% up my alley. I thought that the songs are extremely well written. They're so easy to listen to. It's just a really really solid album, and I'll dig into it a little bit on a track by track basis because I do have some notes there. But I'm curious what your impression was of this one.
Yeah. So I could not agree more. Like this was like I was actually really happy that I listened to the Middle Kids first and kind of had that feeling. It's like, oh, I wonder if it's okay that I don't love this. That was like kind of my feeling about it. I was like, it's not bad, but I'm like, the whole point of me here is to find new music that I want to love. And then so I listened to that, and I shared my experience with that already. And then I got to this, and I was like, oh, like this is why I'm doing this project. Like I loved, to your point, I loved every single song I loved. It's like it's kind of like Wilco. There's a Wilco vibe to it, but I don't know, man. Like I really really enjoyed everything, and I wanted to hear more of it. And the fact that like even just like the first song I heard, which was Faded, which I think is the name of the album, is also the track, the album opener. Right away, like within 10 seconds, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna really enjoy this. And then every single song after that, like I really enjoyed it. So I could not agree more. Like I would say it's definitely up there, 7 to 10, whatever. We'll say 8 million stars, 9 million stars for this one. I definitely agree, and I plan to listen it over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, and this one for me, it's like I keep lists of everything that I listen to, and as I'm listening to it, I give kind of like initial ratings and take notes about it, because at this point, it's like I'm listening to so much music that it's hard to remember what I
Yeah,
liked and what I didn't, and and I'm trying to keep up with new music. So for me, I've gone back to this album 6 or 7 times since I listened to it the first time. And for this particular year that we're in, I've listened to this more than any other album that's come out this year.
yeah,
I have a feeling that by the time the year ends, this will still be in my top five.
nice.
Like I really really liked it, and I wish that like there's no social media accounts that I can find for this band. Like there's not. It's almost like they don't want to be out there, maybe, or maybe it's I don't know. I don't know what the backstory is. I definitely would like to know more, so I plan on doing a little bit more research because I want this is one of those things where it's like you could inject this straight into my veins.
Right,
You know what I mean? And like I want more
straight to
of
the
it.
dome.
Yeah, I know exactly, and so right away, you know, when I first started listening to it and listened to Faded, the first artist that came to mind for me was like, oh, this has like a really strong like Nathaniel Rateliff feel to it. Like I could see this song coming off of like a Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats album. Um, really really liked it, and then the second track. To me, it's like the second track that comes up. It's like you could have plucked that out of a Tom Petty record. Like it sounds like a Tom Petty and the Heartbreaker song. It's like
Yeah,
just this great Americana. The lyrics are easy enough to follow, but they still have something to say. And it's just the kind of thing where it's like it's just really like it just makes you. It's like a hug from grandma. It just
yeah.
makes you feel good. You know.
There
Um,
is just an overall groove to the way that they play. Like it just feels so. I love that. A Hug from Grandma is probably a better, I couldn't think of a better way to say it. It feels good. The whole album, I mean, generally it feels, you're excited, not even excited, you're just comfortable listening to whatever's next as they play. It's like the type of thing that you would want to see in a small venue, like just a really, but it's a small standing venue, right? To where you could actually dance and feel and groove all around. And I definitely agree. Continue.
Yeah, no, exactly. Go play this. Go play it in Nectar's. Like, let me go and check it out.
Yeah. Oh, and real quick, by the way, anybody out there, if you guys know anything else about this band, if you have any connections with this band, let us know in the comments. Like we want to be able to learn more. Any information that you have would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's like with with Jason Weinheimer, who's the kind of the brainchild behind this. I mean, like, to that end, it's like I would love to know like what he's listening to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like if you have a connection to the band, like, one of the
I'll
things
have what he's having.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like I want to know what else you're listening to because man, I really love this. And and even like Justin and I had talked about bringing one of the things that we'd like to do with the other podcasts is to bring musicians on and have musicians like deep dive some of their favorite bands with us. You know what I mean? So like I could see somebody like this being like okay, like we'll get along really well
Right.
because of what you like is what I like.
Yeah.
So let's talk about music together. And then so the third track, You Can't Lose Everything, it reminded me of another band that I love from last year called the Future Birds. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but if you're not, I'll hook you up with some of their music. So, another the Future Birds had a top 5 album for me for last year. Teamwork was the album last year. Loved it start to finish. I love the vocalists of that band. Another one of those bands. It's like like I cannot wait to see them live. And I went to Tennessee to see my sister and her family. Actually, a couple of years ago when my mom passed, and the Future Birds were playing at the Caverns.
Really?
Which is like a venue that I really want to see.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't get a ticket. Like it was sold out. You couldn't get in there. So that was but another one. So if you're going to open up an album and the first 3 tracks remind me of the Future Birds, Nathaniel Rateliff, and Tom Petty, which are like 3 like you could put on any of their albums, and I'm into everything that all 3 of those bands have done.
Yeah.
So it's like this was right in my wheelhouse. And then they come out with the single from the album is Quiet Part Loud, which it's just such a great song. I mean, it's like the notes that I have here. It just says it's just so goddamn good, because it just is. Like it's great.
And by the way, I'll just touch in real quick that these are also, I mean, they're quick songs. Like they're 2-3 minutes each, and so you it's almost just a tease in itself. That's kind of the thing. It's something you almost have to and want to go back and listen to the whole album again because it almost happened so quickly. I was like, oh, that's it. It's over. Let me get some more of that. So I just want to.
And to that point, it's like when I played it through the first time, there was other stuff from that day that I wanted to listen to that was coming out. Like good stuff that came out the same day that this one did. And like, as soon as it ended, I just started it over and listened to it again, without moving on to hearing everything. Because typically what I'll do is listen to everything that I'm going to listen to for that day, one after the other. And then I'll kind of go back to the stuff that I liked and pick through it. But this one, it was like, as soon as it was over, I just started it right back over. But yeah, I mean, it was like this song, I have like a playlist that I keep of my favorite songs of the year, and that song went on it immediately. And it's just I listen to Quiet Part Loud, and I'm like, how is this not on every radio station in the country right now? Like it just seems like it's just such an obvious hit. And the funny thing about the song to me is what it reminds me of the most. I don't know if you ever saw that movie with Tom Hanks called That Thing You Do.
Oh yeah. Actually, I love that movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie, right? But the name of the band that's in the movie is The Wonder, is the Oneaters, right? And then, but they play that song, That Thing You Do.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is like the real life version of That Thing You Do. It's so catchy.
Yeah.
Like it's just such a goddamn good song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, if you're watching this, if you're still with us and you're watching this, like, please go listen to this band, listen to this album. I don't know.
And by the way, since we're on YouTube, I'm going to put playlists for both of these albums again, just so you. I mean, just go ahead in the description, and you'll just see a quick a link to both playlists, so you can listen to them straight through.
But yeah, so I mean, and then it just goes on from there. I mean, it's like every single song is amazing. And then the thing that got me the most about this album, listening through it, is then they cover "So Far Away" by Dire Straits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I love it.
And I'm listening to that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? Like, and again, same kind of thing. Like, who is the guy, right? Because like I need to be friends with this guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because we obviously listen to all the same music. Like,
Yeah.
that song is from Brothers in Arms, which is, probably my favorite. I love Dire Straits. That's probably my favorite of their albums.
Yeah.
So like to hear that and to hear it done so well, you don't hear people covering Dire Straits a lot. You know
Right.
what I mean? But
And
to
by the
do it,
way, off that album, off Brothers in Arms, like that, this is one of the slower songs, right? But even the way they do it, they put it, I keep using the term groove because it all comes up for me, but they add their own little bit more of a groove to it, right? They
yeah.
kind of add their own texture to it that makes it, obviously they're unique. I think that's the best way to do any cover. But that definitely stood out to me to where it stands out as not only a cover, but done really kind of to fit the rest of the vibe of the album as well.
Yeah, I mean, it just and it just fits right in. So it's something that it's really really cool. And then the whole album, I mean, there's not. It's one of those ones where it's like there's not a stinker on it. You know what I mean? So it's like everything that the guy does is just fantastic. So it's I would highly recommend this.
Yeah, and
It's
do we
in
know of any other projects that he's been in? That did you do any research and find anything else about him?
not really that I can find. It's like when I look up his name on Spotify, what comes up is the Libras. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So like I assume based on some of the preliminary investigating that I did that he's probably involved in some other stuff.
Yep.
And maybe it might be one of those things where somebody's like, oh yeah, he's the guy from blah blah blah, and I'll be like,
Right.
all right, that makes sense.
Like Fruit Bats, like the guy from Fruit Bats.
Yeah, it'll be something like that. I'm sure. Somebody's going to be like, "How do you not know this guy's name?"
Right.
But I mean, it's I just absolutely love this, and there's I grew up in the South, and so I have kind of a soft spot for what I consider to be like Southern Americana style music, and this fits that vibe perfectly, and I loved it, and there are not enough good things that I can say about it. So that is, if you listen to nothing else that is recommended, like this is the one that you should listen to.
I
And
concur.
based on what I'm seeing, about how little press there was surrounding, like somebody wrote it up in Glide magazine, and there was like a local little rock paper that did like an album review of it. And of course, I mean, I just got glowing reviews in both of those, but that was really all that I saw about it. And it's like, and again, it's like I think that if enough people heard this, they would be clamoring for more of it.
Yeah.
So I hope that people will check it out.
A hug from grandma.
Yeah, it really is.
Take it while you can get it.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Exactly. So great stuff.
Cool.
And then I guess to round out the recommendations, we're going to talk about the album is 4042 from Vampire Weekend, and what this was a collaboration with Vampire Weekend or from Ezra Koenig, and the band Goose, who if you're listening to this, you probably know Goose by now. If you don't, you need to listen to him, because I will make the declaration at this point that I believe that whenever it is, hopefully years and years and years from now, that Phish fades away from the scene, I believe that the band that will pick up the torch is Goose.
Yeah.
And I've listened to
And
all the other jam bands that have come up, and nothing has immediately left that impression with me the same way that this band did.
yeah, I agree. And one of the things that came up for me, and because I've caught bits and pieces here and there. Again, I listen to a lot of Phish, but I obviously hear enough about these guys for the past really since late 2018, I think, is when I first kind of started hearing about them. They're in Connecticut, obviously we're in New Jersey here, and so started kind of coming on my radar. And I listened to bits and pieces here and there. I missed out on a couple shows, and then the pandemic came, and we kind of I almost even went to see a drive-in show of theirs, and I think I was something like that, and I wasn't able to do it. So I haven't got to see them live to really get the full dive in. But listening to this, which we're going to get into in a minute, there's like I don't know how to say it differently, but like a perfect balance of youth and maturity in their style. You know what I mean?
That's yeah. What a great description that is. I really agree with that. They're obviously very accomplished musicians.
Yeah.
I don't know a ton about the backstory of the band. I know that I like listening to them. I believe that they are classically trained musicians. I think that
Okay.
I think that that's part of their gig, at
The
least.
snarky puppy type of a thing.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I think that it's something like that. I think that possibly Rick, who I think is the front man for Goose. I think that, and I'm hope that I'm not totally making this up, but I believe that I either read or heard somewhere that he went to like Juilliard or or one of those schools So he's, very much a classically trained musician. I mean, and they're all, the whole band is just
Yeah.
really solid.
And they're having fun. I mean, you can feel that. You can tell they it feels like, and again, from a distance, but it feels like they're not only having fun, but they're having fun together. Like they're enjoying
Yeah.
what they do. They're enjoying what they're creating together. And they lock in. They get into sync like really really easily. Um, and so yes, I concur. So maturity, youthful. The good part about the youth mixed with the maturity is they've that sets the tone for a long career.
Yeah.
Right, that sets a tone for more growth. But at the same time, they've got the energy now to learn and to kind of do it right and get out in front of as many people, which they're doing. I've seen, between them and Billy Strings, I've seen more about their tours in 2020, which nobody's really out there yet than any other bands. In fact, they're releasing a new album, and so they're really, in a smart way, taking advantage of the pandemic to stand out and to be heard when a lot of other stuff is kind of being muffled.
Well, I mean, yeah, and what they did, it's like, I mean, and that's kind of part of what I'm thinking about too, is that one of the things that makes Phish is that they're innovators.
Yep.
It's like they created the modern festival. Like
Yeah.
they have done things that like they are the trailblazer. And
Yeah.
then you have Goose, who did like the bingo tour and who
Yep.
did, who figured out right away how to make music in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And they blaze that trail for everyone else. And it's, so it's something that I've just got a lot of respect for the band. I also have not had the opportunity to go and watch them live. I think that I may have caught their set at Peach Fest a couple of years ago
Yep.
because there was a few bands whose name I didn't like
Yeah.
pay attention to, but I listened
Sure.
to and was like, oh, I like this. I think that they may have been one of them because I think that they played the same stage that Ghostlight and a few other bands did,
Yep.
maybe. But I haven't intentionally seen them live yet, which I plan to remedy this year.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, so the version of 2021 that they do, I felt like the kind of the beginning of the version stays relatively true to the Vampire Weekend song. Whereas I don't know if you listened to the Sam Gendel version of the same song that he did, which was kind of like an electronica jazz. Like there were a lot of different things that were going on there. I didn't connect with that one as much as I did with
Yeah,
this
I did
one.
that. What I did was I listened to the Vampire Weekend version, album studio version. Then I listened to the Vampire Weekend live version before because I want to get a feel. Like, hey, what is this based on? And then I went into the Goose version. So, but I didn't
Okay.
hear another one as well.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, I mean, and that's with the Vampire Weekend version, Father of the Bride, the album that came out on was another one from last year that I think it was last year or the year before when it came
Yeah,
out, where it was
before, I think.
yeah, I mean, it was a really really great album, and this song I really liked on that album, but I couldn't give it its due because the song Harmony Hall that's on Father of the Bride was that was one of those ones that's
That's
similar to like Quiet Part Loud, where it was like immediately upon hearing it, I was like, okay, this song is
Yeah.
incredible.
In fact, I remember hearing that and like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know it was Vampire Weekend. I was at a party and like just hearing on the background, I was like, oh, I was like, who is this? And so it was like Vampire Weekend. I was like, oh well, that makes a lot of sense. So I was like,
Yeah.
this is Vampire Weekend. It's amazing.
Well, and it's weird too because I think that there seems to be kind of like this weird thing surrounding Vampire Weekend where it's like people who listen to jam bands, like for whatever reason, like think that Vampire Weekend is uncool. But it's
Really?
like man, like you guys are missing out. Like you gotta
Yeah.
listen to Vampire Weekend. Like Modern Vampires of the City is an unbelievable album.
Yeah.
Father of the Bride is a great album. There's a lot of cool stuff that's going on there. But then to get into the Goose version, you have Goose playing 2021 for 20 minutes and 21 seconds. The regular part of the song is very well played.
Yep.
And then they get into this jam.
Yeah.
And there's two very distinct peaks in the jam. It is so well put together. The instrumentation is beautiful. They recorded it in this room that's like filled with like windows and stuff like not somewhere that you would typically think about a band playing.
Yeah.
Um, it almost looked like they were playing in like somebody's sunroom.
Yep.
Um, but man, like it sounds so good. Like the song itself, like they really play a great version of it, and it's just you realize how good these guys are when you realize what they were trying to do. You know what I
Cool.
mean? So they played a live version of the song that they recorded, and
And
they
they've
nailed.
got like 4 or 5 cameras. Like I mean, obviously there'll be a link here as well if you haven't seen it already. But it is awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, I mean it's incredible, and it's. And when I think about like how much skill it must taken to be able to play an improvisational jam and still nail the exact time,
Yeah.
that they were going for,
Yeah.
and how just in sync and how locked in that band is. Like, just incredible stuff,
Well,
So, and
and again,
I'm glad
speaks
that
to
you dug
that.
it as well.
Yeah, speaks to that maturity in the sense that this is the type of, and Spafford's is like this as well, by the way. I don't know if you've listened to Spafford, but
Mhm.
I'm surprised how much there was another band. I was like, oh, it's probably just another jam band, but I was surprised how much they lock in, and I really like them as well. But like there's aspects of this where I was like, oh, did they compose this ahead of time? Was this to be the 2021 mark? You know what I mean? Like it was that good and that tight that you realize. Then I was like, okay, never mind. I'm paying attention now. They're playing off each
Right.
other, But I mean, that thought occurred to me at one point. Is this all? Did they write this out to make it the time frame because they were so tight? Uh, I noticed like from the 8 to 9:30 mark. At the 8-minute mark is when it really gets rocking and really gets powerful. Up until the 9:30 mark, and then they kind of go into this fusion thing for a little bit and kind of grooves up, and then at the 15-minute mark they pick it back up again, and it gets to the next level. I had literally one of those moments where the old "is this still Tweezer?"
Yeah.
Thinking I was like, is this still 2021? Is that type of a thing when they're
Yeah.
deep in it because it's so good, so rock, and they shifted from the power to the fusion back up to the intensity. And then back at the 18-minute mark, they slow back down into the theme of the song to close it out. But really, certainly worth a multiple listen as well, even just to get lost in the jam. I mean, it's the type of
Yeah.
thing.
No, it's incredibly well done.
So that's again two thumbs up, another 8 million stars for Goose. Can't wait to see more. I'm really excited for their album. I think it's called I'm making this up, but it's somebody's nightclub. It's like Shady's Night or Shenanigans. I think it's called Shenanigans Nightclub, and it comes out like June 5th or something like that. So we'll definitely dive into that once that one comes out as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and check out the stuff that they're doing live on YouTube. I mean, they did during the pandemic. They did that rooftop show that was awesome. I remember watching the live stream of that, and and like tweeting with people about what was going on there, and it was like, oh man, and then there's been some other podcasts that have taken the time to cover this band, and I think there's unlimited potential, for what this band can do. So
Glad to be along for the ride.
yeah, you know what I mean. Like, glad to be early adopters on that one.
Yeah. So with that, man, this we're wrapping up on some serious time here. This was an amazing first episode. I think we covered a lot of great ground. Well, by the way, we are going to have a set list tea for a Goose show. I haven't decided which one yet, but I will have that in the link below as well. If you've been to see Goose, let us know, because I know there's a lot of you have been able to get to see them in the last year or so. Love your thoughts, love your comments, love your perspective, love your ideas, and whether you think they're going to be the next big thing or not. Anything else we've talked about, we'd love your opinion on. So leave comments below. In the grand scheme of things, check out SetListTees.com. It's your favorite show, turn into your favorite shirt. John, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm sure I'll mention many times, your knowledge, your background, your intention, your purpose, your presence is all genuinely appreciated. And I'm super excited to be on this journey with you.
Yeah,
So
thank you, man. I appreciate you thinking I'm in. This was a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to the next one.
let the games begin. Thank you for being you. We will see you on the other side.